good Sunday morning or afternoon, wherever you're at. So, yeah, we definitely have a lot of things cooking here. I'm reading some of the pre-comments here that people are putting in, and they're saying, "Rest in peace, NPR, PBS." Also, a lot of other people are coming in here just talking about what's happening with the whole situation. And clearly that's what's in the news right now. And it's also kind of very mirrored by what I see in the energies right now. I mean, we've got a full moon here coming up. It's going to be next Saturday on the, what is it on? The full moon, I think, happens right on the 9th, which is, again, Saturday, right after midnight. And I got to tell you, this is a powerful and dicey full moon. I wouldn't be surprised if the owners or the people at the top of the pyramid who are constantly funding all this stuff don't create a little unrest, because we definitely need something to sidetrack what's going on for the elite, don't we? Or don't they? I should say, we don't need it. They need it. And, I'm kind of amazed at how this is going to unfold from what I see in the interrogations. I really think you're going to see not only accountability, but some people really get prosecuted here. Everything that they found in the media on this, that's being reported with Gabbard and the FBI, again, Kash Patel and the rest of them, it really looks like they've got them. And I corroborated that before in an interrogation. We'll see how that plays out. And again, this is the big news right now going on. And I think it's going to come to fruition. Another thing is we're seeing a lot of clashes here between the communists in California and also the government, the federal government and the Trump administration. And this looks like it's going to continue to heat up. We've got a Mars-Saturn opposition happening on the 8th, which is this Friday coming in. So very, very powerful. And not only is it a Mars-Saturn opposition, we're also going to see Mars opposing Neptune. You got to remember, Saturn and Neptune are right together. The planets of structure, confusion, and delusion, right? So this is some pretty powerful stuff lining up, while at the same time, this configuration also makes a sextile to Uranus, which is really, really powerful. Actually, it's a trine, not a sextile. It's a trine. Trines mean they're in, fifth aspects or ninth aspects, and they often bring a lot of force to this whole energy. So, this week could be pretty dicey. We've also got Mercury, going to start to station here and go direct on the 11th, which is a ways off, but nonetheless, very, very powerful. And so this full moon, I'm expecting to be a very dicey week here coming up. A lot of action here, even though I know the Congress and all that went home. Don't be surprised if we see some more dissension created. All we need is one news broadcast, right? And it's going on. Also, people have been mentioning a lot about earthquakes, and we could see some more. We just saw a 4.3 here in California, again, not too far from the San Andreas Fault. So there's a lot of action going on here energetically right now, no doubt. And again, these Mars-Saturn oppositions at the same time going into an opposition of Neptune. Mars opposing Neptune is literally the twilight zone. And I can tell you it brings all kinds of weird subterfuge and trickery. And when it's also in opposition to Saturn, not good. So we'll see what happens here, and let's hope everything slides by. I just cast another interrogation on it this morning. I get it's not going to be a catastrophe, but there's likely to be trouble, and we'll see where. I get it's more domestic types of trouble, and of course we still got this whole thing heating up here. This whole thing with Canada is a lot bigger than everyone is realizing. There's the tariffs, the standoff. And I think what's going on is ultimately you're going to see a real crunch on Canada to have to cave in to where the money is. And we'll see where that all shakes out. But I would not be surprised if ultimately something happens where Canada is rolled in to the fold of the United States or the whole North American Union. More on that later, but I think that's ultimately where it's going to go, because it's always about the money. And when you follow the money, all these tariffs, everybody's been predicting the end of the world, oh my God, a major catastrophic crash, which, I'm surprised that the owners haven't engineered some type of economic catastrophe. And I'm sure they're trying as we speak. But it really shows the country is going to go through a little bit of a problem here between now and next spring with the solar arc Mars Sun square. But I think we'll come out of it. We've got too many other good aspects going on. And I think what's ultimately happening here is I see the United States, again, there's a war between the globalists and the nationalists. They literally want to turn this into a new one world order. And I think what Trump is doing, opening up all these resources, all the tariffs and everything else, is actually in direct opposition to that. It's trying to make the United States whole, which will allow us to get autonomy from these bankers. And I can tell you, when I look at this, again, I played this many, many times. It is really Aaron Russo who nailed it on the head when he said it was the bankers.
The real problem is the banking industry and the bankers in this country. That's where the real problem lies. That's the root of our problem. That's why we've lost America.
And, he's not wrong. That, again, was Aaron Russo. And I played that clip many, many times. And this is just a lot deeper than just the bankers, because if you look at how this is funded out, the Federal Reserve is not any more federal than Federal Express. And again, 112 years ago, Woodrow Wilson rubber stamped that deal. And there was so much subterfuge behind that and string pulling. And they own this place. This is the owners that George Carlin spoke about. And I think this is why, and this ties into all this stuff that's going on right now, the Russiagate and all this stuff that's being uncovered. And again, I said at the beginning of this year, I think you're going to see things come together that are going to be so jaw-dropping. And not just, again, people sitting in front of cameras and talking about it. I mean, actual prosecutions. Again, never before have we had a DOJ with Pam Bondi, the FBI with Kash Patel, and then you've got Radcliffe in the CIA, and Tulsi Gabbard in the DNI. So, and you got Trump in there. I don't think we've ever had a situation where we've had a collective team like this, which really should be the ones running our government, actually doing this. And they're catching so much stuff that we're not hearing about. And I think this whole ball of yarn is going to come unraveled based on the interrogation charts that I've looked at, as well as the spring equinox. I think we're right around the corner from seeing some unprecedented things, which are ultimately going to lead to, I think, down the line, quite possibly the freedom of this country from the bankers, because that's where it's at. I mean, look at Tulsi Gabbard here.
Not surprised that the mainstream media is refusing to cover this. And if they do mention it, their approach is to try to diminish the effect and the impact of the revelations, the historic revelations that were found in the documents that we declassified and released, or to try to bring voice to detractors and critics who also just say, oh, well, this is bizarre or this is crazy. But when you actually look at the coverage and you look at some of the comments and the quotes that the mainstream media may be choosing to publish or highlight.
There you go. So, I mean, when these lies ain't the same as the last lies, we know someone's lying. And this has been, again, the Smith Month Act. And I had played this a while back where on Joe Rogan, this is a long, long time ago, I played this. And the Smith Month Act was put in by Harry Truman, which was basically to have our media not be able to do propaganda against us. And of course, this guy mentions it really well.
Are you familiar with the Smith Month Act?
Is that the 2011, 2012 thing where Obama allowed people to use propaganda against United States citizens?
Yeah, that was what was done then under Obama was the effective repeal of it. It was called the Smith Month.
So there you go. And I mean, when you look at this, I always liked Harry Truman, of course, he was before my time, but I can tell you, I liked what he said, and I watched a lot of interviews. And again, I quote him. He said, if you're a politician, you're not going to get rich. And if you are, you're crooked. And I don't know how you can say it much more succinct and direct than that. And again, this is a really interesting time. And I think this month, with all these aspects going on, up until the full moon, really powerful. Because, and even the new moon is exceedingly powerful coming up here. It actually happens very close to Trump's ascendant. And we'll talk about that more as we get into the weekly updates. But a lot of powerful stuff here happening. And I still say, we're going to see in America here some powerful things. A lot of people have been also asking about Europe and, Australia and various different places in the world. And I think this whole new one world order effort has been going on the entire Western civilization, not just America. And we're seeing so much stuff going on here right now in terms of immigration, flooding the border. Remember, I mentioned Cloward and Pliven, that was the playbook. And Saul Lewinsky, who has been trained, or I should say trained, the whole playbook with Obama, Hillary, and all that. By the way, listen to this one. This is Hillary back in 2016. Remember this? I just grabbed a few clips off the news. And Hillary, I call her Hillary. She's basically literally complicit with this whole thing. And of course, now they found evidence that it looks like she funded it.
I think that there is a lot to investigate. And I'm personally very grateful that somebody of the stature of Robert Mueller would be there conducting this investigation. There's a lot of smoke.
There's a lot of smoke. I think that goes both ways, Hillary. So this is going to really heat up. And again, the Department of Justice is really where the power lies, because it's literally the top, prosecutorial branch of this government. And if you don't have a DOJ that's going to do something, you're pretty much done. And this is what we've seen for probably the last definitely 50 to 80 years, off and on. We put these administrations would have key players in there that would never turn the screws to make something happen. And we're, I think, in a totally different place. And again, this is the inauguration chart that I saw with, President Trump being sworn in, whether he put his hand on the Bible or not, doesn't matter. We're seeing transformations like we've never seen before. And again, whether you hate the guy or love the guy, lots of stuff is going on, and I'm going by the astrology, and that's what it shows. So yeah, a lot of people are talking about the Smith Month Act. And clearly, I have to say that, that's what's going on. Our media is absolutely complicit in these whole, arms of selling this stuff to everybody. And it's so transparent when you look back. And I think what's so interesting about social media right now is that we're able to play this stuff. I'll probably get canceled for this show, but whatever. The bottom line is, I can tell you, we're never before been able to go back and recall clips, replay stuff, and you just catch these people in blatant lies. And it's exactly what this astrology shows this year. I think we're going to see some crazy stuff here. So yeah, said Hillary never looks to someone in the eye because she's always lying. That's right. Yeah, you can always tell when Hillary's lying. She's talking. But yeah. Here's another little tidbit, since we're on the attack of the human race here. Just got word this morning. Camille actually told me that this is going on in California right now, that the American Academy of Pediatrics wants to shut down religious vaccine exemptions, which means you've got to get your kid vaccinated, whether you like it or not. And, again, crazy stuff. And, parents should have the right to choose. Again, this is what we're seeing. I'm actually surprised Trump doesn't have 8 holes in his head. They tried. They put a nick in it, but, they will not stop trying, because what's happening right now is clearly he is removing all these trigger points in society and funding of them. It's follow the money. This is what's interesting. If you look, this is always where the trigger points are, is the money. And I think to make the United States independent, from what I'm seeing in the astrology and the progressions that are going on, is the key, is absolutely the key. Bring the manufacturing back in here, even though it's going to be modernized manufacturing. You know, the big danger is AI. AI is going to be wired into everything. And we are definitely set, you know, to become a Terminator movie down the line if we're not really careful. So we'll see what happens. So anyways, I'm looking at some of the comments here and a lot of great stuff here. Somebody's saying something about February 20th, 2026, what you're saying the other day. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's when, again, we've got Uranus going to station this fall, and then it's going to turn around and, of course, come back over these fixed stars in the Pleiades, Alcyon and others as it moves forward. And you've got also the Saturn Neptune. So we're likely to see a lot of really intense stuff this year called transformation. And I think this month is a real trigger point with this Mars-Saturn opposition, and Neptune is affecting that conjunction. And we'll see where it all goes. But that's my opinion of what's happening. And also, someone's mentioning here is precession, which, again, you know, a lot of Vedic astrologers are hard, fast, and strictly the sidereal zodiac in defense of the classical and what we call traditional astrologers. They look at the tropical system up against the fixed stars in their current position in the sidereal to the tropical. So it's a little bit of a mind bend to figure that out, but quite good. They both work. Again, you got to split your mind, be like Sybil a little bit, and look at one from one perspective, meaning the sidereal and the Vedic, and then you have to look at the tropical superimposed up against the sidereal. Both will give you some very interesting results, and I'm always looking at the two of them. And so anyways, powerful stuff here. I'm looking at a lot of the comments here, and somebody is saying here that Sybil, they're commenting on Sybil. Yeah, I can tell you one thing, that someone else is quoting Cloward Pliven, and again, that's, anybody can look that up. You will see. First, they say you want to create uncontrollable bureaucracy. The second thing you want to do is uncontrollable debt. And third and final, flood the borders. This is exactly what's happened in so many other countries, particularly Europe. I haven't heard it's quite that rampant in Australia, but I think it is from what I've heard. And I know I'm going to be doing a talk with some Australians here that's going to be really interesting. We're going to take a deep look into the Australian chart at the end of this month. I'll give you the dates on that as it comes up. So it'll be a lot of fun, because we're actually going to take the founding chart of the country when it was formed, and of course, look at all the progressions and transits to that. And that's what I've been doing with the United States. And, you know, it's much harder with some of the European countries. And the reason why, some of these countries are quite old. I mean, definitely up to 2,000 plus years old. And if you're trying to go back and get an origin date on those, not so easy. Where you can do it easier with Japan or the Chinese Communist Party or Australia and some of the countries that have been reformed. You know, it's a lot easier to do. But I would say we're going to see some interesting stuff come out of Australia, because I've heard the same thing here when it comes to New Zealand and Australia. I've talked to a lot of people in the military. That same whole COVID hoax was put on them. Not that COVID was a hoax, but it was released to really destroy society. And I think they did a real good job at putting a dent into it. So anyways, I'm going to keep today a little bit short because again, I've got a busy schedule here today. But somebody says, when the bull sits on Wall Street with his head turned so you can see his eye, Aldebaran, where the Nazis came from. Yeah, it's always follow the money. It really, truly is. And I have to say, if we can keep this country where it's, again, Constitution and the Bill of Rights are upheld, especially in this upcoming AI situation here that we've got. This is going to be, again, AI is going to be wired into everything. And, this is going to be a lot. So, somebody else is saying here, Obama, I call him Obama, abolished the Smith Month Act. Yep, that's right. And it made propaganda legal. And not only did it make propaganda legal, but if you follow the money, it's funding these shows. It's literally a communistic effort on this country. And again, in California, I think it's the breeding ground for it. It is the literal place where communism has been focused on and sold to people. You just watch Newsom, and he's pretty, well, he's actually not good at it. A lot of people don't like him, but he's certainly been selling it to us a lot. I'll say that. So anyways, I'm looking at some more of the comments here, because I can only stay about a half an hour today. And a lot of good comments here. A lot of people are saying a lot of things here. So somebody's mentioning Lionsgate, and it's very interesting how you look at the propaganda, how it gets funded. I could tell you, Frank Capra used to say that he was very dismayed with what got funded and what didn't in the propaganda machines. And, he would have been in a good position to know. And he was very lucky to start out in the early years of Columbia Pictures, because he did make a lot of great movies, but later on he became very dismayed. And I always mention the story about It's a Wonderful Life. That movie was actually destroyed in the marketing. The only reason everyone knows about A Wonderful Life, because the studios tried to kill it. They didn't want them getting independent in Liberty Films, was because the copyright ran out and the TV industry found, hey, look, it's a free movie. And they started playing It's a Wonderful Life for free because the copyright ran out. And then everybody went, whoa, wait a minute, this is such an incredible movie. Jimmy Stewart said it was his favorite movie. But what I like about that is I studied Frank Capra a lot. He's really an interesting guy. And he was very dismayed with the whole propaganda machine. And of course, this is exactly what we've heard from so many other people. So, yeah, someone's mentioning here the Dow Jones is the banker's market. Yeah, you bet. It's a whole nother reality. And it's always full of the money. And it's a shame how controlled we are in this society about money, which, again, brings me back to what I like to talk about the most is who are we? These spiritual beings having a physical experience. And when you look at our daily lives, they are controlled by money. And this is why, again, many of the ancients would disappear away from society, and they would find the whole conscious level would shift. And it's very true. And I can tell you, I love the human race. It's just the people that drive me nuts, right? So, but a lot of good comments here coming through. And a lot of people, again, mentioning the Smith Month Act quite a bit here. And so a lot of powerful stuff here going on in the world right now. This is actually a really interesting time to be alive. Somebody's mentioning here, what is the part of fortune, if I remember it called correctly? Oh, that's a good question. This is very much like the eclipse points for people who are interested in astrology. The part of fortune is also opposite the part of spirit. And what it is constantly moving because it's based on the moon. See, when the sun and the moon align, we get a new moon. Well, that's when the part of fortune joins right at the ascendant at that point in time. And as the sun and the moon separate, or you could say the moon separates from the sun around, every week the moon goes through a quarter, right? First quarter is the first week. Second quarter or full moon is, of course, 2 weeks after the new moon. And the third quarter is the third week. So the part of fortune separates, or you could say widens, as the sun and the moon, because it's taken in a mathematical formula where you take the distance between the sun and the moon and you project it from the ascendant. That's how it's done. And there's different methods. A lot of astrologers will use a different formula at night than they do during the day. And the moon has so many karmic, mysterious implications. I mean, when you look at the moon, many of your ancient astrologers would pay a lot of attention to the prenatal moon, which means where was the moon before you were born? Was it a new moon, full moon, quarter, etc.? And the moon is, again, the crucible of creation. If you take the seed, which is the sun, which is the circle, the moon is the crucible. It's the crescent of the moon. And, a lot of people laugh at that in linear left brain, you could say science, but boy, there's a lot of truth to it. Farmer puts the seed in the ground. Dad puts the seed in mom's womb, or an animal puts the seed in the womb, and then spirit becomes manifest. Well, this is what's interesting about new moons, and getting back to your question on the part of fortune. The part of fortune was played a lot of attention to by ancient astrologers, because where it was in the chart, in an interrogation or in an election, they would look at what they call the dispositor, which was the planet ruling the sign where the part of fortune was, and the part of spirit was opposite it. Now you're starting to get into a real interesting topic, because the East and the West kind of went different ways. There's all these different, what they call lots, or mathematical calculations projecting different things from different positions of planets, called lots, LOTS. Some people say they're Egyptian. Some people say they're Arabic. The medieval astrologers paid a lot of attention to them. I used to follow lots so much my eyeballs crossed. But I have to say there is something definitely to the part of fortune and spirit, and there are other lots you can project. The only problem I have with all that is it gets a little detailed, and I find the straightforward astrology gives you a lot of information. This is an interesting topic, because in Vedic astrology, they get into all these yogas, which are combinations from the moon. So a lot of interesting stuff. And of course, we have all these different dasha systems. So that was a good question. I like it a lot. So somebody's mentioning here, I remember being taught about propaganda in grade school. I wonder if it's still being taught. I'm quite sure it is. That's the sad part, is focus on the youth. That gets into an interesting topic too. I'm glad that person brought up that question. The lower conscious mind is such an interesting study. If we look at who are we, well, the lower conscious mind is really, like I say, the steering wheel, the gas pedal, and the brakes. And it's really important to take an accounting of our lower conscious mind. It's the interface between the five senses and this physical reality of time and space. And many people might have heard or be familiar with astral travel. And this is not taught in schools. They don't teach the young kids this stuff. And that is, my first experience with astral travel, I was just a little kid. I think I was probably 6, 7 years old, something like that. We all dream, right? We all have dreams. And dreams are very interesting, because they can often signify a lot of symbolic things coming through the so-called subconscious mind, or astral worlds, into the conscious mind. Of course, look at Edgar Cayce. He was the famous dreamer. He'd go to sleep, go into an astral state, and see all this stuff. Many psychics do that too. But my first experience, again, I was a little kid sleeping up on the 3rd floor of the house. And I had dreamed that one of my little guinea pigs had died, right? And I ran down the stairs, and I saw it exactly. Ran down the stairs, and there it was, exactly like that. And I said to my mom, I said, I just dreamed this. She goes, no, I think you might have astral traveled. Little kid. I said, what's that, right? And she explained it to me. And yeah, I have to say, we're all capable of this, especially if you realize that you can, and anybody can. There are many classes out there training in this type of stuff. You have to be careful with it. But, and there's a lot of great books on it too. But interesting stuff. And we can all learn to do clearing. I've had several clients lately that are attacked by entities, and I was actually teaching them clearing techniques, which is really interesting stuff, which is a form of astral projection, or you could say pushing out what we want to have created. And the third eye chakra, which is right here connected to the pineal gland, the one that they've been trying to calcify with all the chemtrails, the fluoride, and the food additives, is really what keeps us connected to that. It's very, very powerful. And if we keep focused on the fact that our conscious mind is really an interface to this world, but it's really not us. It's certainly a part of us. I mean, there's no question, but it also is something to step outside of. And again, there's where that term common sense or common knowledge or self-awareness really comes into play. And I think that's so important, to police ourselves outside of our lower perceptions of reality, which, again, one of the books I always mention that I like a lot about this is a book called Esoteric Practices. And it was written by the Magus of Strovolos. And he actually has a companion volume called Esoteric Teachings. And it's not a direct thing into astral travel, but it trains the lower conscious mind to become focused rather than just a receptor. So this is interesting because the whole focus is on creating what he calls thought form elementals. Now, this gets into the whole genre of self-help, setting goals, taking action, achieving, learning, and manifesting, which is really, I think, the magic of the human mind. And it's really the magic of the human spirit. You often find many musicians and very talented people have probably in a previous lifetime developed these skills and came here and magically, and became successful at it. So, and a lot of us are suppressed from doing that. So this is the interesting, you could say, entanglement of karma, which is shown in the birth charts. So very, very fascinating stuff. And nothing does that, in my opinion, quite the same way as the Nadi and the Vedic astrology. It's absolutely amazing. It really, really is. So a lot of people are saying, yeah, play Gregorian chants to help keep the demons away. That's another interesting thing is cymatics, you bet. So I always say the best thing to come out of the religions was the music, right? But I would say it's there's a lot of great truths in religion. There truly, truly is. And one of the interesting things is the whole elements of music, chants, mantras, and cymatics. This is what creates all this sacred geometry, which is very interesting. The solar system itself creates sacred geometry all the time. In fact, if you track the way the planets go forward and retrograde around the sun, they are actually making really amazing sacred geometry. I have a couple of books on that. It'll blow your hair back. And you really look at what are we in here? We're in a matrix of experience in the physical world. So anyways, somebody saying here that he believes the Freemasons are tied to esoteric beliefs. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Masonry is interesting because it really comes out of the Egyptian lore. And Freemasonry, of course, the Scottish rites. I don't know if you're familiar with all that, but there's quite a history to Masonry. And I think what it's gotten attacked is certain, just like everything gets infiltrated, but its core principles were actually very, very interesting. In fact, I used to poke around in that stuff over at PRS, which was where Manly P. Hall had created the Philosophical Research Center. And of course, he was a 33-degree Mason. I never really got into, I only met, Manly a couple of times, and it was brief. He sold me a book, but a nice guy. But yeah, there was a lot on Freemasonry in the PRS, and there's a lot on the internet now. So pretty wild stuff. When you really get into it, there's so much influencing this world in terms of karmic elementals, spirits and angels, and divine and demonic stuff. It's really deep, in my opinion. And it's interesting, if you read the Book of Enoch, it gets into some of that stuff, which is, a lot of the extraterrestrial people in that whole world, as well as the Tartarians and on, we'll find there's a lot of complex stuff going on here. And I think a lot of beings that come in and out of this reality that we're not aware of in the lower 5 sense conscious mind. So it's really, really good. So somebody's saying, did you know Chelsea Floor? I don't know who that is. No, I don't know. Maybe I don't connect with that name. Somebody's putting a question in here. So yeah, someone else is saying that hunting the gods. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff here about the Anunnaki and the Nephilim and all this stuff that's talked about in the Book of Enoch. and very, very deep stuff. And I've been around a lot of that. Somebody's saying here that literally it's an Earth-centric animation. And again, you get into quantum physicists, and they talk about the same thing. We're truly in a reality. I mean, drop a brick on your foot, or try walking through a wall, or not, keeping your hands on the wheel in your car. You're going to have a very bad day. But on the other hand, this reality structure is something we're all going to exit when we do what we call death, right? And it's very interesting, this whole genetic cycle of birth, growth, and death. And there's where the law of 7 comes in. So amazing. There's 7 holes in our heads. There's 7 days of the week. Every 7 days, the moon goes through a quarter. This is a matrix. Clearly, that is very divine. Very divine. It's where spirit manifests. So anyhow, yeah. So a lot of people are dropping a lot of comments on this one, because they're all talking about frequencies and harmonics, and people are also mentioning also salt removes entities. That's a good point this person's bringing up. I often say, when you have entities, you can clear, but it's a good idea that you can actually burn salt if you're very careful in a pie tin, and you can pour them down your drains. And that's why when I set gemstones for people, I give them instructions, and I tell them, never cleanse your gem over a sink. Put it over a bowl with spring water, or do it over the ground. When you cleanse your gem 3 times with spring water, and then there's a whole procedure. You cleanse it with incense, and of course above a candle. And there's a lot of energies that are around us. Now, most of us don't ever pay attention to any of it. We just go about our lives and do what we're going to do. And we are very blessed that the human aura is, for the most part, pretty darn strong and can ward off all this stuff. But it's interesting how, these kinds of things were paid much attention to by the spiritual communities, the alchemists, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of interesting stuff. So anyways, I got to get rolling here, but this is a week, and we'll talk about this on Wednesday, but in fact, it'll be Thursday when this Mars-Saturn opposition, and of course, on the 9th, which is the full moon, we have the Mars opposition Neptune. So this ought to be a really powerful full moon, because Mars is also trining Uranus at the same time. So let's hope we don't get any earthquakes anywhere, and we'll look into that more on Wednesday. And Mercury, again, is slowing down and skidding to a stop to come in on its direct motion. So, which happens 3 times out of the year. A lot of powerful stuff. So, and of course, we got Uranus slowly beginning to slow down too, because it's going to retrograde this fall. So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening. Again, my time is short here today. In the future, I hope to get into longer ones, but a lot of fun stuff here. A lot of great comments. I wish I could, answer all of them. And someone's mentioning here real quickly, I'll mention this here, which is gematria. And that's an interesting thing too. If you look at what's been lost in the biblical texts, which is the Shem Hamaphorish and so many other references to angelic forces, which are really, really powerful. This will come right back. So anyways, yeah, a lot of stuff. I actually put that on angels and on pendants here. I'll show that to you. You can see you can see the angels. That's actually the guardian angel calculated from a person's birth chart from the ascendant. And that's the position of the inner 7 planets in the sidereal zodiac, which is very, very interesting stuff. You can do it in tropical too, but it's better, I find, in the sidereal systems. And the gematria is literally the numerological correspondences to where all of this stuff lies. I do a lot of those pendants. A lot of people are very interested, and it takes me quite a bit of time. And I actually find the numerology that corresponds to the ciphers and codes that are in the Psalms and in the ancient texts of the Bible, which are pretty interesting stuff. And so much of this stuff has been lost. but a lot of fun stuff. So, all right, everybody, have a good weekend and be safe this week. We'll talk to you on Wednesday, and we'll see where this energy goes mounting up. We'll be okay, but I hope they don't cause some domestic terrorism or violence here coming up here.